Now, there we go. That's the indicator. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another chart reading group. This week we're looking at Sydney, who's generously provided his chart details. We sent this chart out, would have been about a week prior, I think, Michael, and you sent it out. So
hmm
we've had a bit of time to sit with the chart and look at the details and things like that. The last reading we did was for Nancy, which looked like a bomb went off in a planet shop. Everything had just sort of gone off in every direction on the chart. It was quite a confusing chart to read. But what a pleasure this is. I think it's almost the complete opposite. We were just talking about it right at the beginning. It's a very organized, very well-structured chart. Um, so this is a completely different shooting match from the last one that we had. Um, so, has anybody had any insights or any thoughts based on, the chart? Has anybody taken a look at it and come up with a possible place to start or even a theme for the chart? Has anybody spotted something like that?
First house stellium. Look at that.
Mm,
In Leo rising. So that tells us a lot about his personality, I think. And they're all very uh they're beneficial planets. So it's a fortunate placement in his first house.
yeah.
It tells me that he's probably pretty charismatic and he's probably a good communicator because I see Mercury sitting there right next to Venus. Mars tells me that anything he puts his mind to, he probably has no problem getting done. And Jupiter, again, being the planet of good luck, it expands anything that he does
Mm, okay.
in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. That sounds good. What does anybody else have any thoughts I want to throw in there? Build on that or pick up on something else new on the chart?
um, anybody have anything to say? You just keep talking?
I see Sun Chiron in the 12th house as very, very important and prominent. And I get this energy from the chat like somebody's like a shaman or very spiritual or is come to heal or is a healer of some kind or has come to heal to show themselves and that's where we're headed.
hmm
There's some kind of private life, a lot of introversion about not wanting to be seen, but at the same time needing to be seen.
That's a really interesting juxtaposition you've got there because I think that really, really sums that up. I mean, the looking at a Leo sun generally, that's magnetic, that's attention drawing, that's something that needs to be the center of attention. But we have it here in the 12th house, which is it's a strong placement for that sun being in Leo, but being in the 12th house, not so much. It's a contradiction in itself. And then we've got Chiron sitting right on top of that too, within 4 degrees. For an asteroid, that's a little wide, but for Chiron, I always give it a little bit of room. You know what I mean? To move in because we always feel its impact on the chart there. So um, that's really interesting. And when we bring that together with what Michael said earlier, we've got this fully featured first house, but we've got a chart sitting on 15 degrees, which seems to sum this chart up beautifully. You know what? If that Pluto wasn't down the bottom, we're looking at a locomotive chart simply because Pluto's down there at the bottom. Yeah.
hmm
Um, and the lead planet would be that sun in the 12th house. We wouldn't be counting Chiron and the South Node up there. But if we took that Pluto away, then you would have a seesaw chart, a completely different kind of chart. You know what I mean? We've got a chart sitting on 15 degrees. We've got a Leo sun, which is magnetic and loves to be the center of attention, but it's stuck in the 12th house where it's not allowed to be the center of attention generally. It's somebody working in the background. You know what I mean? Um, so I think just based on what we've said so far, it's that might be an interesting keynote for the way this chart works. Big cluster of things happening on the right-hand side of the chart, big cluster of things happening on the left-hand side of the chart. And if we didn't have Pluto bonding it all together, which isn't perhaps the prettiest bow to stick on top of any gift. That would be your seesaw chart. Those two would be in conflict with each other. That Pluto down the bottom there actually creates a grand cross. So, I find this chart fascinating. They're all fascinating, but I'm a storyteller. I look for stories in every chart here, and that's starting to tell me a very interesting story, you know.
Yeah, when I saw the chart, I thought about a butterfly because it has wings
Mhm.
and then Pluto at the bottom holding it together.
Yep.
Yes, and then he's got the moon over there in the seventh house of relationships. It's in Aquarius, and that balances out a lot, it looks like. His relationships, he probably seeks out people that are intelligent and that he can have good conversation with. You know, um, it's like I said, it's opposite. Is it opposite Jupiter or is it opposite? It's opposite all of those, isn't
That
it?
moon's opposite the ascendant, it's opposite Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
That
So the
Mercury
With
rules
me?
opposition.
Virgo, that Venus is in its fall in Virgo. And then we've got Mars at the end of that little stallion binding it all together.
But since the sun is the actual chart ruler because his ascendant is in Leo, we
Mm.
place a
Fuck
lot of
off.
emphasis on we place a lot of emphasis on the sun, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And it's the
Okay.
lead planet too for a locomotive chart.
Oh my
So
god, I hate this fucking phone so fucking much. Oh my fuck, can you guys hear me?
yep,
Yes, we can hear
I'm going to
you.
mute you. So
Okay.
yeah,
God. I am so sorry. I've been trying to talk to you guys for like 5 minutes.
that's all right.
It's
You just
okay.
said to that going on. I'm really
Phone's
tempted to just leave
garbage.
that in
Oh
the
my
video. I'm not going to cut that out.
sorry. Oh my
That's
god,
okay.
you're
The struggle
recording.
is real. We've been there, so
Hmm.
understand. Understand. I'm getting a lot of Mercury retrograde energy coming at the moment. It's okay. It's okay. Relax. It's
Yeah,
totally
no
fine.
big deal.
Yep.
All right. Okay,
Okay.
what about the fifth house over there where we see those two planets? We see Neptune and Uranus sitting in the fifth house. What does that tell us? And it's in Capricorn, right?
It kind of emphasizes the tidiness of the chart, doesn't it? I mean, we've got all the transpersonal planets all organized off into Capricorn on one side. We've got all the personal planets all put into the first house there. We've got this lurking sun energy happening in the 12th house. So it's quite a compartmentalized chart, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
How does that
Mm-hmm.
sound, Sydney? Or would you describe yourself as a compartmentalized and structured person?
Yeah, I would.
I was going to finish that sentence just by saying nod your head.
Sorry, I wanted to say something about the moon, and I've been
Yeah,
trying to. Um,
and your phone's
so
been
I
fighting
see,
you.
like, with the moon in Aquarius there, in the tarot, that's not a very good, like, astrological combination. Like, I just wanted to say, like, I see a lot of struggle, like, emotionally there with that placement.
And we've got it in the
Like,
seventh house, the house of relationships, and we've got a Venus in the first house, which is in its fall in Virgo. I'd
sorry, can you
definitely
speak
echo
up?
that. I can see where you might be going with that, Adrienne.
Are we just looking at the chart first and then getting into the?
Yeah, we're just getting an overview, and then I think we'll start bringing it all
Mm-hmm.
together.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just whatever jumps out at you if you want to bring up, and then we can tie it all together when we look at everything that kind of jumps out at us. That's what we usually do.
Okay, if we're going
Because
to
I
stick
do
with the,
astrology
sorry,
readings for
keep going.
people that are complicated. I just see like a lot of complicated emotion, like with the way that moon is kind of working with all the 12th house stuff.
Well,
But I
you've got.
would have told you that 10 minutes ago if my phone worked.
I'm glad it's
I
working
am
now.
delayed.
You know, if you're going to
Okay, no.
exacerbate that 12th house energy, you've got Saturn and Aquarius in opposition to Chiron and to the Sun sitting there in the 6th house as well. How was your health as a
Fine, but it's
child,
like I
Sydney?
don't know
Did
if
you
they're
have any
necessarily
problems?
playing off each other, but with that south node there, I would think it would be very difficult for him to even try to work on his Chiron or access that sun energy, because the south node's pulling him kind of back
Hmm.
when he's wanting to go forward. In the sixth house, like dealing with things more concrete.
As a kid, to your question,
Hmm.
I had, I was, I wouldn't say I was all like a sick a lot, but I definitely was uh, way more sick as a kid. But
Hmm.
now I feel like I have really good health, so I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, good.
So is that the Chiron opposite Saturn in the sixth house? Would that give that indication what he was just referring to, being sick as a child? But obviously the first house you can see, like I mentioned before, Jupiter being a
There's a lot happening anyway.
fortunate planet, and him having good luck because of that.
Well, we're looking at, I'm just looking at Saturn in the sixth house right now in Aquarius, and it's retrograde. And what we've found generally is when a planet like Saturn is retrograde, then some of those heavy hitter aspects of the planet tend to be dumbed down a bit, softened a bit. And I'm just wondering if it's health that's the issue here. Look, I hear what Adrienne's saying. There's a definite degree of detachment. I think structure's probably incredibly important to Sydney from what I'm seeing, and that structure may be at the expense of spontaneity. It may be at the expense of emotional expression. That's a very careful Leo placement for me, for what I can see. And when you've got Saturn sitting in the sixth house opposite something like that, it makes me wonder what that care is built around. Especially Chiron, there's an expectation of pain for expressing those leonine qualities. And we've got Saturn sitting right on top of that, enforcing that feeling. Adrian's drawn attention to the moon in the seventh house, which is in a very, very careful placement, and that's in opposition to the ascendant, to the image that he's presenting to the world and things like that. And for me, that's another level of care. So we've got this Aquarius energy, this detached, stand back, cold, analytical energy. That's the observer for this chart. That's sitting at the back, and that's keeping a rein on those Leo qualities. There's Aquarius sitting on all of that Leo. So I just wonder how that might express. Could we throw that to you as a question, Sidney? Do you feel, are you a guarded person? Are you a person who is, you feel like you're the observer watching yourself, or you're in constant care of how you express yourself? Would you say that?
Yeah, I would say that. I would say, yeah, I'm quite objective even with my emotions. But like in the last maybe 5 years, because I'm 32 now, so um, I don't know. I think from my mid 20s onwards or early 20s, I figured that about myself, and slowly started understanding that I need to get better with emotions, because I was being way too objective with them and unable to access them. Um, yeah.
Was there a catalyst? Was there an event that happened in your life that made you think, gee, I need to be doing things differently? That's not working for me.
Um, I think they tended to be my relationships for sure.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
All right. Just one general question I thought I'd throw out to you. How did you end up in Canada? Did you move with your family as a child? Did you make a choice to go to Canada?
Yeah. My parents are technically Indian, but they made the choice of moving to the Middle East for like a better economic future. So they
Mm,
were there, and then at some point they've wanted to move to Canada, and so they brought me along with them. Um,
mm,
but they did not really want to move at the time that they had the opportunity to. So we all had immigration status, and
yeah.
once I reached 17, I moved by myself because I was like, it's easier to get into university and stuff since I already have immigration and I don't need to like send in my grades. I can just do grade 12 here and easily get into university. So then I moved by myself, and I've been by myself like since like 17.
Okay.
Mm.
I think that's giving us a clearer picture on how that Pluto's expressing itself in your chart.
Yes.
Yeah, it's an interesting chart because there's a lot of like very strong spiritual components. And for women, when we talk about spirituality, we kind of talk about them being very like intuitive and feely and like stuff like that. But I find when men are kind of in that area, like it makes me think of like occultists and stuff, how they're like very deeply spiritual, but it's more of like a um mental construct
Mhm.
where you could be have like really deep spiritual like values and a mindset, but then he's not he's not connecting the way he might want to with people because he's not because that moon is just I don't know. It's
Well, it's
just
an
there kind of
Aquarius, yeah, which is a detached sign. So that would explain
yeah.
that definitely.
In the tarot, it's the five of swords. So it
Swords, yeah.
also it includes like because Aquarius is so mental, it talks a lot about like the corruption between the delicate emotional energy of the moon and the cold, detached, intellectual. They're very like
Mhm.
opposites. So it's almost like it creates like a negative self-talk. Like it's almost like he could potentially be um talking himself down, um like talking bad to himself, because the mind starts to get corrupted by all that, not corrupted, but screwed up by all the emotional energy that it can't absorb,
Process. Yeah.
if that makes sense. It's like all the clouds in Aquarius, kind of going around in the air, and then that moon comes and fills up those clouds with water, with emotional energy, and it just gets too heavy. I think it's hard to. It's in an interesting spot though.
Let me ask you,
Yes, it is.
Adrienne, we've
Kind
got
of
a Leo
important.
ascendant that quickly turns into a whole bunch of Virgo energy. Would you see that as an expression of that? I mean, when a person sees Sidney at face value, he's got this Leonine quality about him, that magnetism, especially with that Jupiter there. Um, but I imagine once communication starts, we've got a very strong Mercury there, it all quickly turns into Virgo energy. Um, do you think that may emphasize that Five of Swords pattern that you're talking about? So we're talking about somebody who may radiate a spiritual sense of awareness and magnetism, but there's an analytical structure to the way that it's delivered and communicated, and that may create a blind, and that in itself may be a level of contradiction. Would you say that would be a possibility?
Is that a question to me or?
Oh,
Mhm.
that was to Adrienne, just based on what you were saying right now
Oh
with
yeah,
that, emphasize that.
100%. No, I 100% agree. I think that um I think almost in some way the outside Sydney may be different from the inside Sydney because of it. Because it's such a deep it just seems I just get this very deep feeling about it, especially with all that 12th house business, and then there just might be like some challenges expressing that kind of depth. And at the same time, that south node, we don't really want to get pulled into that south node energy, but for him to even get into all the gifts he has in that 12th house, it would just be very challenging. It's an interesting karmic path. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fascinating, really.
Well, let me
Yeah,
throw
I think
something out
so.
there because you've started drawing attention to what's happening in that fifth and sixth house there, that little cluster of Capricorn. We've got two transpersonal planets in the North Node. When you look at a pattern like that, it's about maturity and responsibility. It's about a person who has to grow up quickly and make decisions and take responsibility for themselves. It's somebody who needs to let go of any childhood attachments that they may have and needs to start becoming an adult maybe faster than he needed to. And that marries in perfectly with what we're seeing down here with this Pluto and Scorpio. What a powerful placement that is. And that's the fulcrum of this chart. So we've got all this personality stuff happening on one side of the chart. We've got this careful, guarded nature happening on the other side of the chart in Aquarius. And we've got all this Capricorn energy down the bottom of somebody who's needed to grow up quickly and become mature, maybe before they were ready to. And that, based on what I'm hearing and from what I'm seeing, I'm thinking that maybe have been the catalyst to somebody who probably could have been a lot more comfortable in their own Leo energy if they were allowed to live a normal life by normal standards, growing up the way that we all do, surrounded by family and gradually making our way out into the world. But when you're forced out into the world, you need to grow up quick. So when we were talking about this first house energy and this 12th house energy, there's always this voice in the back of your head that's saying, is that, and I heard the word cult come up at one point. Is that manipulative energy or something like that? And I don't think so. I think it's somebody who had to grow up quickly and make decisions that may not have merged well with the path that they saw for themselves or the life they were living at a time. It's a person who's had to make their own decisions and decide where their lines are going to be drawn. And Sidney's already said in his 20s, he already identified some personality traits that were holding him back. So with the only real trines, the strongest positive energy in this chart's all running down to that Capricorn energy down the bottom of there on the right-hand side. So, yeah, and you know me, I'm always looking for the path of least resistance on the chart, where the flow is, where everything's going. And to me, that's where it is. And it's an interesting placement because they're transpersonal planets. You know, we don't choose those. We don't really choose how to express those in a lot of ways. They express themselves through us, or we're born into them and they happen to us and we adjust around those, you know, we grow. And I guess I'm offering that up as maybe a point on the chart where this schism happened, this 15-degree placement that we've got on all of these house things. That may be where it happened. We've got this Pluto sitting right at the bottom of the chart, and that may be the division point for this chart. You know, it is. That's turned it into a locomotive chart instead of a seesaw chart. So maybe that's a way in to unpacking the puzzle that is Sidney. How does that sound?
Sounds great. Again, the first house gives me the idea that he's probably, when he goes anywhere he goes, he is probably the center of attention. Even though the sun is in the 12th house, it's still very close to Jupiter and they're both still in Leo. Maybe growing up with Chiron in the 12th house, maybe he had siblings, or there were other, maybe he had to fight for attention, possibly. And that's why the sun is sitting so close to Chiron. But yeah, that first house and that cluster of planets over there, even though it is a 12th house sun, tells me that, like I said, anywhere he goes, he's probably well liked. And I think Adrian mentioned earlier, ladies' man.
Yeah, I was thinking that, like, do you think he likes, like, do you like that type of attention, Sidney? Because with that Chiron so close to the sun, like, I really like, Michael, how you, like, did that first house, like, examination there, because that was really good. But then with that Chiron so close to the sun, it's almost like, does he like the attention? Like, I'm just saying, I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think as a kid, I remember like there were moments that I kind of liked it, but growing up, I think I preferred not to have it. And then I realized I just would have it. So it was a very, very opposition kind of thing. I think also my personality, I've also realized, is somewhat similar in the sense of like, it's very introverted, but then there are moments I'm also very extroverted. But I think I prefer the more introverted side. Even now, I think I'm definitely always trying to reconcile between the two sides of me. The more attention seeking, which I let go in certain aspects or in certain places, like I dance and I do competitions. So I definitely am there in the eye of like people, but at the same time, I do really enjoy being in the background and observing, if that makes sense.
And that's the moon in the 7th house in Aquarius. That's where that comes in, I think.
Mhm.
his personal, who he is inside, and what he would prefer. However, the cards that he was dealt obviously is going to put him out there in the spotlight sometimes.
So high
Yeah,
functioning
it's
introvert,
interesting.
Yes, a high functioning.
able to present as an extrovert, but you probably need a couple of days rest after, you know, a whole bunch of contact with other people, I'm guessing,
Mhm.
to recharge and reconnect with yourself.
Yeah, and I think you guys have touched upon that whole um, spiritual side slash I don't know. I mean, that's kind of where my life is kind of moving. It's one of the reasons I started doing astrology, because I started seeing how powerful, and I started seeing patterns within people, and then I was like, okay, this seems like an interesting avenue. And I remember also feeling elemental energy when I dance with people. And I would try to be like, oh, you might have a lot of, like, let's say, fire in you, or I could start feeling these things before, just after COVID, actually. It was like I became sensitive to these kinds of things within people. Now I'm desensitized in a way, but it was not something like I was actively looking for, but it was just something I started like actively observing what I could feel. Um, and then I think I also got into human design. I don't know if you all have looked into that. Um, and that allowed me also to see myself in a way that I had not seen myself before. And then moving into a more, again, like a holistic guide slash healer has been kind of my mission in the last 2 years. Like I work in a very logical, technical, I work in tech, so my life initially was like, very, very Virgo-y in that way, very analytical. So I definitely identified with that, the three stellium Virgo personality for sure. And now it's kind of like moving into the more healer path. But I think that's where, yeah.
And so, Damien, like
Yeah,
you
that's
said,
very cool.
where the energy is flowing from the fifth house, from the two planets, the outer planets,
And the North
flowing up to
Node.
the yes, and then flowing up to the midheaven, which is in Taurus. That sounds like what he just explained to me.
I'm
Yeah, I
curious
think
about
so.
the fifth house. Like, what is your relationship with your family when it comes to spirituality? Like, do you find that it's um something you keep going back to with them? Or is it something like, because it looks like
Mm,
very,
yeah, I've at the moment I don't speak to my mother. Um, and they tend to be like religious in some aspect of um like they're Catholic, so they go to church and stuff like this, but I don't really identify with those things personally. Um, yeah,
they're Catholic.
yeah,
Wow. Well, there we have that ritual aspect too, right? That Catholics are very like ritual based.
oh yeah, very ritual based, and yeah, it doesn't it doesn't sit well with me. I mean, initially I just went with it as a kid, and then growing up, I was like, this makes no sense to me. Yeah. But weirdly enough, now I kind of see the wisdom in rituals and community and all these other things. So I don't know, I'm kind of like back and forth, but at the same time, I will not go back to like religion in a way, but I do see like way more powerful guides within like astrology or human design to help people versus religion.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
That describes your Uranus in the fifth house because you're going to be looking for alternative forms of, well, getting back to that word responsibility. I think you feel there's a responsibility somehow attached to your spirituality, to define your own spirituality and to express it. And that's emphasized by that Neptune down there. It's in, God, and again, they're all retrograde. But that's conjunct Uranus. So you're not going to go with the mainstream, you're going to go with something different.
Mhm.
And you'll
Unconventional.
Yeah, unconventional.
Mm.
And a lot of what you've said about your journey after this is actually, I was wondering how that moon and that Saturn were going to express up there in Aquarius, and it sounds like they're actually very, very strong. So we've got this personality that's a performer in a sort of way in the world, but we've got this other entity behind it that's watching everything that's happening and that's learning and that's making decisions. And that's that Aquarius energy that I'm seeing there on the chart. And that's countermeasuring. Gosh, even, Adrienne touched on an interesting point earlier, and I just want to come back to it. She was talking about an internal voice. Do you have an internal voice? Like, especially when you're around people, when things are going well, when you start getting louder or you start expressing yourself more, do you have an internal voice that's telling you to reel back, or that's suddenly gets struck by a sense of pessimism, well, we're putting ourselves in harm's way, or you know what I mean? Do you have that?
Mm, I feel like as I was younger, I felt like it was hard for me to enjoy things for sure. I feel like I was always um yeah, it would just really be hard for me to like be out there to enjoy anything like most people would enjoy. But as I've gotten older, that has kind of changed. I feel I don't know. I don't have that voice as loud, if that makes any sense.
Do you think that may be because you've in a way detached from your family, from your traditional roots, that you've been able to explore more on your own, make your own decisions without another voice? And I'm not just talking about your family, I'm talking about mainstream Catholicism as well. Maybe that's
Yeah.
giving you the room to explore and to be the dispassionate observer in your life while you're performing at the same time.
Yeah, no, I don't think the voice was my family like and
Sure.
that was more like, let's say, from when I was 0 to 13 years old, where I would have this voice almost, I won't say haunting me, but in a way I felt like I never could enjoy any good moments because I always would have this voice, good or bad. Bad would be even worse, but
Wow.
even good time things would be really hard.
That's the Chiron
But I
beside the sun.
Mm.
Sorry, yeah. But I think as I've gotten older, despite like the Catholicism or the family or everything, that they all happen at different timelines. But I think as I started becoming a teenager and I started uh, seeing how, like in my class, in my school, how everyone was really respecting my voice in like leadership positions, I started gaining a sense of like confidence, which was just like building upon, and then I stopped like having that voice as much. It's still there, but it's less. I think as a kid, as you were saying before, with like, not having the best homes and feeling um, having to grow up quickly because of, I don't know what you see in my chart, or because at that time I thought it was this and this and this.
Mm.
Um, I yeah, I had to grow up quickly, so I can there was that aspect to it as well.
It's interesting. I hear a lot of like healing work that has been done. I'd
Mhm.
be curious to see like where the current transits would be affecting the chart. Do you know what I mean? But I mean, I don't really look at charts of people who like have done as much healing work as you do, Like, so
Mhm.
it's fascinating that. Do you think it's that Pluto down there helping out?
Are you talking in
Like
terms
you're
of
like
healing?
grounding the chart, I think.
Well, if that's a seesaw chart, then that's the fulcrum at the bottom of the seesaw. It's holding it together and again turning it into locomotive. So everything, thanks to that planet being there, is linking right up to that sun right at the front. And it's an awkward placement for Leo that's pulling a locomotive chart. So I agree. I think that internal voice Sydney was talking about, I think it's Saturn and the opposite of the chart that's watching everything. But with that retrograde there, Saturn often will poke at you just to hurt you, to see what you're going to do, or to make you to do something that it feels you should do. But that's retrograde, and I think maybe that voice is actually benevolent to a degree. It's helping Sydney to grow quickly. It's the ruler of that Capricorn chart, so there's a Capricorn energy too. So there's a level of investment in that. So yeah, I think that Pluto could definitely be catalytic for the whole thing. And I think it is the bonding agent for this chart. It's kind of holding it together. Sun's leading it, but Pluto's balancing it. I think that could be quite a powerful voice too. I think that Chiron definitely is constantly checking in, pinging that Saturn in the sixth house. You know, where are we at with this? Where are we at with this? Have we grown through this? Have we grown up through this? Does that still hurt? You know what I mean? You threw out the word that was a different timeline before, Sydney, which gives me a little insight into the way you compartmentalize and measure and manage your life. That was interesting. So that Virgo energy and that Aquarius energy is definitely very, very strong. Your placements on your chart, your planet placements, to me look very curated and very strong, right down to your Mercury being in its rulership right up against Venus, which is in its fall. So maybe you're not here to build relationships in the conventional sense. You know, maybe you're here to evaluate and to grow. And that sounds consistent with what you're saying now anyway. It sounds like you've already been doing that. And again, to COVID, that's 5 years ago. So you obviously have drawn a line in the sand somewhere and decided, I'm not going that direction anymore. I'm going this direction.
I have a question because I think I missed something. Sidney, where were you born?
I was born in India.
And what age did you relocate, immigrate?
So I was born in India. I think I moved when I was two to Kuwait in the Middle East. And then I moved. Yeah, and then I grew up there, and then I moved when I was 17 to North America.
Oh, wow. Okay. You know why I'm asking, Damien? Because I like to look at the nodes, and I see the nodes in Cancer and Capricorn, so that tells me something about family, and then Pluto is right in the fourth house. And I also, when we look at a natal chart, we're seeing the transits of the mother on the day that you were born, Sidney. These were her transits. And it seems that she may have felt somewhat detached from her own family and very maybe attached to your dad, but you were also born on a full moon.
Yeah.
So there's may have been some kind of separation or something with the mother being detached or from very far from her own family. So maybe she was not able to the unconventional style of mothering that you received. You may find that in a partner, or you may prefer that kind of thing. I don't know why, just coming out like that. And the south node with the moon, and then Saturn ruling the north node, like being this responsible and working in some kind of healing mode, because you're a healer with this. I mean, you may have been a healer in a past life.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 12th house is very spiritual too, like working with guides or working with the divine.
Yeah, those have been
I
like
was
very
thinking
strong
that too with the
themes.
south node there.
That placement, that north node, south node placement, Capricorn and Cancer, quite often that can be a person who has trouble letting go of the apron strings, a person who may be a bit clingy to the mother. But with that Pluto at the bottom of your chart, it looks like you never really had a choice in that anyway. So that was something that was supposed to happen. Other people I've seen with that, they're very attached to the mother. So it's interesting, and that in itself presents a challenge for lifetime. With the Capricorn, there is emphasizing personal growth and cultivating your own sense of responsibility and using that as the strength to move out in the world. Sydney, it sounds like when you were 17, that decision was made for you, and that's the way Pluto rolls. We know that, and that's one of the
Pluto at
strong.
17 degrees.
Sorry, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I didn't get that. What did she say?
I said Damon mentioned Pluto, and that you left home. You changed at 17, and Pluto is at 17 degrees.
17 degrees.
Okay.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Cool.
And the moon 18. Look at that.
That's a good catch. That's neat. Mm-hmm.
Just bouncing off what you were saying earlier too, Antoinette. I mean, we've right at the beginning we were looking at relationships here. We've got this Aquarius moon sitting in the seventh house. We've got this Venus in its fall and Virgo. Sorry, maybe in a lot of ways our parents are regarded, well, at least by Freud, as our prototypes for relationships and stuff, and maybe that had a lot to do with that sense of separation too. I mean, we can speculate about it endlessly, but
Mm.
you know.
So Scorpio in the
Speculate,
fourth house. Go ahead.
speculate about what endlessly?
Well, I was listening to somebody talk about this Unabomber documentary that's on Netflix at the moment. At a young age, he was very sick. He spent a lot of time in hospital in his formative years, when he should have been building attachments and relationships to his planet and to his family. God, I'm getting my Mercury retrogrades kicking in. Hard. And as a result, he always had that level of detachment. And I'm just saying, maybe you've got this moon in Aquarius up in your seventh house. You've got Venus in Virgo in your first house. So when it comes to love and how you express and relationships and things like that, there's a level of detachment. Maybe at a negative, even coldness. And you've talked about it at some point in your life 5 years ago. You realize I can't keep living the way that I'm living and doing things the way that I'm doing it. I need to start making some changes and make some decisions, because that's how a person whose relationships are probably more intellectual than emotional roles. That's what they do. What I'm saying is that Pluto down the bottom of the chart, because I think, we've got this transpersonal stuff happening over there in the fifth house, but that Pluto, I think, is the pivot for your chart. That's what everything's moving around. And maybe if we were looking at it from a karmic point of view, relationships, conventional relationships, growing up, having a nuclear family, and a little house and all of that sort of stuff, maybe that wasn't on the table for you this lifetime around. Let's take a step back outside this lifetime and just look at if there's a plan that's driving your life. Maybe you've come here to do bigger things. So I think maybe you're always going to rationalize relationships, but that's by design. And if you didn't arrive at that conclusion by yourself, well, you were provided with this Pluto family in the fourth house in Scorpio that would make sure that you already began that journey. Does that make more sense? No.
Yeah, I mean, I
Okay.
agree with the things you've said there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The moon in the seventh house really wants to be with somebody, though.
On their own term, on his own terms, because it's in Aquarius. So
Somebody different.
yeah,
Yeah.
somebody.
So yeah. If you're talking about like a romantic kind of way, I definitely am like polyamorous in the sense of like I don't go by the conventions again. But also within polyamory, there's like different modes of relating. And for me, I think in the last 2, 3 years, I've understood that relationships doesn't hold a very strong amount of time in my life. Because I've realized that I have interests in different things, whether that be in dance, psychology, astrology, helping people, finding my path in how to help people in a very holistic way. So I'm kind of like taking a sabbatical for next year to do a lot of like body work as well and gain all the skills to like package as like a holistic healer. So for me, I don't see myself like living a more conventional relationship, like style of things where, you get, I don't know, married or stay with one person or and build like all your life around this person. That just seems quite daunting for me and taking away from what I'm supposed to be doing. That's the feeling that I've been getting.
Yeah.
Well, there's Pluto in the fourth house of Scorpio. That makes some sense. Yeah, doesn't it? It's unconventional. Maybe because of the way that he was brought up, and Scorpio is the sign of like secrets and and Pluto, of course, is
I see it.
So that's cool. Very cool.
We've got a square running from that Pluto up to that moon too. I don't know, using my own words, when I look at that, that may be even a degree of repulsion to traditional family.
Mm-hmm.
But what we have here
Oh,
also
this
is a quincunx running from that moon up to the south node. So that's where the work for that's going to happen, and that creates a trine back to that Pluto down the bottom. So I think in terms of relationships and all of that sort of stuff for you, Sydney, just looking dispassionately at the chart, I think it's always going to be a process of adjustments for you and growth and journey. But even the South Node's generally not a destination we're trying to make our way to in a lifetime. It's stuff we've already done. It's stuff that we're in the process of letting go of. And that's where, as far as relationship energy for you, is probably better invested based on what you're saying. I mean, you've already, again, too, you've got terms to describe relationships and things like that and the way that life moves, which are analytical. I think you're already working towards that plan. That adjustment pattern I always look for in the chart when I see a quincunx, whether there's a trine and a square running off to a particular planet. That's, if you're ever going to work on your planet on your family energy, that's where it's going to happen. It's probably going to be through relationships, because it doesn't, with that square there between your moon and your Pluto, you're probably not going to want to work with it directly. It's unrewarding for you. But if we're working on our shadow stuff up in the 12th house, especially in terms of our feelings and stuff like that, we're able to safely do it in a hermetically sealed environment that Aquarius likes, then we may find that we're starting to find less pain or less discomfort coming from that family stuff down the bottom there. Yeah. I just thought I'd throw that out there. That pattern's pretty vivid. And interestingly enough, we've got a trine running to your north node. We've got a sextile running, a trine running to your south node, a sextile running to your north node. So I think I agree with what you're saying. I think maybe look at that 12th house stuff, working in that 12th house stuff. You're working on your family and your sense of relationships at the same time. But based on the terminology that you use and the lessons that you've had and the trajectory your life is taking, I don't think you'll prioritize relationships or prioritize family. Do you see yourself having a family in the long game? Do you see yourself settling down?
No, not necessarily.
I don't see-
I might help. And
Yeah.
I might be a favorite uncle or something, but yeah.
You'll be that uncle
would
who's
be best.
all fun and full of life the first day, and by second or third day, all that Virgo energy will kick it. You'll start getting grumpy and looking at your watch, and hey, I've got a meeting to go to. I forgot about that. So
It would be best, I think, for him to maybe stick to like other people with like a moon in Aquarius or something, because that placement itself is not necessarily. I've just seen it a lot of times in relationships where people get hurt. There's more of an intellectual quality to it, to the moon when it's there. So that's just my 5 cents.
So pairing with other people who are airy.
Moon air signs, I would, because then they would have
Absolutely.
probably more in common with you than someone who's moon Pisces or something. Because you might be drawn, like that Venus there has you like kind of drawn to like outgoing people, other like I was saying earlier, like spirituality in terms of like women. There's always this like water moon around us, and like I think that it'd be better for you to avoid that. I think you'd probably get more out of an intellectual moon than, you know what I mean? That's just what
Yes,
I
because
felt there.
look, he's got all that fixed. He's got all that
That's what
fixed
my moon
energy.
is saying.
Yes,
and
definitely.
because Uranus is in the 5th house, so the love affair or the romance with the partner is gonna be ideal.
Ooh.
Just careful with Neptune.
Yeah.
But Neptune is beside the North Node, so it's gonna help it.
Neptune is
Something
beside
cool
the
and
south
unorthodox
node,
would be
no?
probably really awesome for you.
Say again, Adrian.
Oh, something just really cool and unorthodox, like versus something like gushing intuitive, kind of like there's just all these different places on the healing, intuitive, spiritual spectrum, right? And um just think something more intellectual would be better for him.
In the relationship
Because
realm, yes,
yeah, I
yeah,
think he would just get more out of it.
absolutely, I agree.
Mhm.
And there's
Because
May I
a
he,
ask? Sorry.
for healing. Everything, a lot of first down planets in Virgo, and Virgo has to do with sixth house healing, and that's where his north node is.
hmm
I
hmm
just want to
Yeah,
go back
that's
to
Like
something
awesome.
you said earlier, Sydney, about that internal voice when you were young that stopped you from enjoying things to the level that Leo moon, Leo sun probably could have let you. Did that voice ever coalesce into a sentence or something? Was there a core belief driving it? Do you believe, especially when it's an Aquarius, because Aquarians, especially at a young age, can be quite self-destructive. Um, they can also have, um, some Aquarians, some people I work with who um, have a lot of really powerful Aquarius on their chart. Their internal voice is destructive or hateful, even when people don't see it at the surface. Um, and I'm just wondering that I'm looking at that Saturn there in your sixth house. It's not as strong, obviously, because it's retrograde, but that internal voice you had, or that observer in you that stopped you from enjoying life to the same degree that you could have, to what a Leo moon could promise. Was there ever, could you bundle that up into a word or something like that, that it was telling you that would describe that voice? You're saying it's not as strong now. I get that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember as a kid. It would be very self-critical in a way. It would just be very self-critical. Like I would, if I'm enjoying something, it would not allow me to enjoy it because it was hard for me to be in the moment of it, and I would just be, I don't know, criticizing maybe something in the
Virgo.
moment versus experiencing the moment.
Okay, well, let's come at it from a different angle. Which part of Catholicism doesn't work for you?
Um, I don't think it was Catholicism. I think it was just like how my morals were set up in the sense of like, oh, maybe I should not do this. It might be too much. Maybe it might it take a lot of attention from people or something like this. Um, it was more moral driven with whatever I was like, I think saying
So
is
you felt
correct or not
morally
correct.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, no, I left Catholicism when I was 21 because I was just like, this makes no sense. I'm like around people and I don't understand what they're doing because I feel like they just they just come into church, but like I don't see them actually improving their lives. I don't know. It did not align with me.
Okay. So there's a sense of internal authority in there about what's right for you and
Hmm.
what's not right for you, which we're hearing obviously when you're describing relationships. I mean, there's a strong decision narrative in your life. You're making choices about what's right for you and what's not. You're picking your path. You're deciding where you're going and all of this sort of stuff. Sorry, I just I wanted to come back to that because again, too, I think there's the voice you can't control in your life, and that's at Pluto down the bottom. I think that family energy that's coming, but there's definitely a very, very strong voice in you that's telling you what is right for you and where your direction lies and what you're doing. From what you've told me and from what I'm hearing, it's um, it's a voice that's structured. It's calculating. I don't mean that in a manipulative sense. It'll weigh up
Hmm.
what's worthwhile for you and what's not. That's really what your voice is. And I'm trying to find a way to wrap that, because that to me sounds like the Aquarius influence in your life. And we're seeing it in two
Hmm.
really interesting points there. And that's in opposition to your Sun and your Chiron, that Saturn down there, and your relationships are governed by this Aquarius moon as well. I just want to know what that Aquarius is telling you. If anything else, I mean, it's in a way, it's almost like, gosh, for one of the better example, the Wizard of Oz. You've got this incredible voice, this loud player that's on the stage that's controlling the world, and we've got all this first house and 12th house personality energy happening on one side of the chart. And then we've got this voice behind the screen on the other side of the chart that's evaluating as everything's happening and guiding and predestining and all of that sort of stuff. That has a structure and has a set of rules and ethics that guide the way all of this works. And it's an interesting contradiction on your chart, all pivoting around Pluto down the bottom there. So yeah. How have we done, Sydney? I think we've done. Oh, sorry, no, I'm not going to cut Sandra off. What have you got? Go for it.
Just from what you were saying there, from what Sidney said, that voice that was in him, it was like, you know, he the 12th house and the Chiron and the sun, like, you know, he was a very spiritual but very playful and completely exuberant person in a past life, and maybe wasted all of that spiritual knowledge that he had, having fun with it. And so then the path has led him through to be more analytical with it, and then bringing him into the Capricorn to be very structured, to do something with it. And the Aquarius, again, the analytical, the observer. So he's you know, the Jupiter is still there in his first sign. He's brought all of that in with him into this lifetime. But his path has been to be very, very structured and detailed with it, so that his node in the 6th house in his everyday life, he can actually manifest something from it in his lifetime. Maybe.
100%. Completely agree.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's very cool, because when you think about it, having that Jupiter in the first house, I was thinking this too. It brings in a lot of Sagittarius energy.
That's true. Which is a survival kit for a person who has to survive on their own from the age of 17.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, like it should be, it's like they want, like the North Node is saying, now take that creativity and that spirituality and work together with groups, you know, and because I see a lot of group stuff. The rule of the 11th house is in Virgo, and there's a lot of discernment, you know, and it's activating the personality to work with these groups of people who are new age, maybe. He's coming to do the work now.
That's very interesting, because then I wonder if that sun wouldn't be so uncomfortable as the center of attention, you know? Like
Well, yeah,
working in a healing position sounds like a really good way to kind of mitigate those two energies.
Just getting to what Sandra said, though, that's an incubated sun if we look at it from that point of view. That's a sun under construction. You know, we've still got the moon calling a lot of shots in this lifetime. I'm looking at it from the esoteric astrology point of view, where the moon represents past lives, the sun, the present incarnation, and the ascendant, where we're going with it all. If I'm understanding what Sandra's saying, and it makes sense to me when I look at it, that sun's being incubated in this lifetime. We're building a new sun. We're stripping away the old stuff, the playfulness, the lack of responsibility maybe we had in a past lifetime and things like this, and we're having responsibility thrust on us in this lifetime, and we're going to reconstruct that sun. We've got enough of the good stuff, that Jupiter down in Leo in the first house, to keep our head on the game and keep us focused on building that moon energy. But we're going to come in with a lot of analytical tools, and we're going to work at a blueprint level. We're going to work from the bottom up, and we're going to rebuild this thing with an imbued sense of responsibility this time around. Is that a different way of paraphrasing what you were saying, Sandra?
Definitely.
Okay.
Makes a lot of sense, you know, because with the sun in the 12th house, he may have been in a past life as a monk, you know, and you don't have no responsibility because your meals are done. You have to pray at certain hours. Everything is structured. And now he's coming to working with groups of people in an everyday Virgo scene. It's like we're leaving the 12th house and you have to go out and work with people. And that's your new risk. You're going to have to organize yourself with those Virgo planets. There's a time for prayer time, and but he has to do it now. It's not done for him like as it was before. He maybe have been in a situation like he was a monk in how you say it? In a monastery.
Monastery, yeah.
Monastery, right. Like,
But if that takeaway is correct too, then in this lifetime, the end game, if there is an end game for this particular incarnation, is to build the heart. It's not to detach.
Yes.
So
no.
that's where your journey's taking you. And unfortunately, you've got Saturn's going to teach you how to build your heart. You've got oppositions running off to it. And it's in a sort of dry dock there in the 12th house with Chiron sitting right on top of it. If that's a correct look at the story of your chart, then it is about building the heart. If we're looking at the flow of the chart, we're looking down at the 5th house to give us an indication of how and where the influences driving that are going to happen, and that's going to be happening in Capricorn, which is even more of a challenge in a way. And the wolf at our heels that's pushing us forward is that Pluto down there in Scorpio in the 4th house. It sounds like you've already made some good distance on that, Sidney, but it also sounds like your business there is not done. So that's that, I think, put a nice bow right on the top of it, Sandra. Maybe at the end of it all, with all these analytical, albeit cold planets, the whole point of this exercise is to build the heart, you know. And my God, that's a challenge with what you've got.
Well, Leo is the heart.
That's exactly right. That's where your rewards will come from, personality rewards. Jupiter, 1st house, right up against Mercury.
What do you mean that's where your rewards will come from?
Jupiter's where growth, expansion, rewards, luck, all the good stuff in life that we don't have to push uphill to get happens. And you've got it right in the 1st house, and it's in Leo. So when you are activating that heart energy, when it's happening, then good things will start to happen. Life will start to move. Things will be easier for you. Things will come to you that you weren't expecting, which is always a surprise for somebody who's got so much Capricorn and Virgo energy, and even Aquarius energy. Sure, you leave room for the unexpected, but it tends to fall within a certain range or spectrum. You know what I mean?
And what do you define as activating the heart?
Well, you're in opposition to an Aquarius moon. It's pretty much the opposite of that Aquarius moon energy. It's developing real affection for people. It's developing real affection for yourself, especially with Leo. Leo comes with a lot of sensitivity. We talk about this a lot. We see Leo come up in the chart. Sure, it's got a lot of bluster and it's got a lot of showmanship about it too, but there's a sensitive heart right at the middle of Leo that's easily hurt. And when we weigh it up against Aquarius energy against threatened Leo energy will always win out. It will always win out. I've got an Aquarius sun and a Leo moon in opposition to each other. And that Aquarius sun always wins. Because
but it's the sun for you. Maybe that's why it wins.
Could be. Well, it could be, but also in the absence of anything else, facts always win as far as an Aquarius goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Leo, the rewards for Leo the real rewards for Leo generally have to be given to you by other people. And your chart tells me you're not trained to ask for stuff from other people. And in fact, you have worked out structures and ways to live to avoid being dependent on other people in a way. Does that sound like a fair assessment?
That's fair, yeah.
Okay. So maybe leaving room for people to surprise you. You're talking to a room full of infallible, hopeless romantics probably too. We always want to leave room for love, for things to happen. And we've seen this come up again and again in these groups too. But just leaving room to be surprised, leaving room for growth and warmth. You've got this little cluster of embers sitting over in the 12th house. It's just letting it get bigger in a counterintuitive way. I mean, Saturn doesn't let things get out of control. It's going to keep a lid on it. But your Saturn's retrograde, so they're supposed to be controlled for a reason. But it's not the be all and end all. It's not supposed to be the theme of it, or it wouldn't be retrograde. So And if we're looking at it again from an esoteric point of view, and reinforcing what Sandra said, in this lifetime, that's what the lesson of this lifetime's about. It's about growing heart. Maybe you just had too much of it at one point, you know.
Can I
So
say, I also kind of feel like that heart came in with him, and that may have been restricted. The Saturn came in from early in life with all of that structure, you know, not just the Catholic religion, but living in the Middle East. You know, there was a lot of ways of having to live in the world, which were not necessarily in alignment with the heart that came in. And so that heart was restricted quite early on, and you had to learn to live by the rules, which then you broke out of. And although you may think that that was your practical aspect that broke out of the rules, maybe it was actually your heart that was whispering to you and just couldn't be contained. And if your path here in this lifetime is to be a holistic healer, then heart has to come into it at some point, because without that, then we can't fully heal. And so part of your journey as a holistic healer is to heal that aspect of yourself.
Like spiritual mastery. That term.
So I guess paying attention to that Chiron at 0 degrees of Leo. You know, if Chiron was a planet, that would be the lead planet in your locomotive. But it's not. So, but paying attention to the voice of that, you keep checking up against that heart, see if that pain's still there. Because, you know, you said this voice came pretty early in your life and started stamping out your fire, I guess. But then life's moved you in another area where you can go back and check without the influence of all those other controlling factors, like living in the Middle East, like, you know, Catholicism and all of those other things. I think you're going to take a really long route to getting back to that heart, but you'll get there. That moon, strong as it is and as protective as it is in this lifetime, if you're looking at it purely from an esoteric point of view, from a point of view that you're a soul here, that's with a purpose and stuff like that, it's got a use by date. It won't still be driving your chart by the end of this lifetime. You're going to have to start transitioning, or you will naturally start transitioning that energy over into heart energy. And I want to just talk about too, from the, like we were talking about spiritual leadership and things like that. You know, I've met my share of spiritual leaders who have that sun energy, that light and that fire energy about them, who transition into something colder. And I'm looking at that Virgo energy there at the bottom of the chart there. It's not a kind of cult or religion or structure that lasts long, because people are attracted to that heart energy first. When it starts dissolving down into details and criticism and structure and things like that, it distances itself from it. I don't mean that in a judgmental way or an accusational way, like that's what you do. But I've met my share of spiritual gurus who at the front have that sun energy that you meet first, and then other more detached energies come in later and start taking control of it. And it doesn't, I can see Antoinette nodding her head when we say that. It doesn't go the distance. It doesn't, and it just becomes a lesson, for a growth lesson in yourself, and it puts a sense of urgency on cultivating the heart and being genuine and being real and being in the moment. Because when it comes to love, the mind can only tell you about different kinds of love. It can't feel it. So maybe that's your challenge for this lifetime, is to how to learn how to feel real love and real compassion. I don't think it'll be just for one person. I don't think your polyamory will ever be at risk from that point of view. But how to
Pluto
feel.
is in the 7th house now.
What's that?
It just came to me that Pluto will soon go over the moon. Well, not soon, but
yeah,
it's in the 7th house.
Maybe, yeah, just to wrap it up, maybe it is about developing the heart chakra in this lifetime.
See, because it's strong emotions, Pluto. But maybe they were buried in the 4th house.
Well, maybe that's a
For
good opportunity to say if in 6 months things have radically changed and Pluto's done a number on you, you're quite welcome to come back and we can go over this again, Sidney.
yeah,
See what happens.
very interesting chart.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
How have we done, Sidney? Are you comfortable with this reading? You think we've done okay?
Yeah. I think you guys were very spot on.
Great. Does anybody have anything else they want to say? Something we may have missed out on?
Oh, there's so much more, but
There is, but I think we've done a pretty good job of finding a story or a narrative in this chart. And you know, where we began, where we are right now. If I look at it as a story, if I look at it as an evolution, which I think by the end of these readings we always do, Sidney, you're making astonishing distance in your chart. You're moving really, really quickly through there, and you're doing it with the power of your mind and through that Capricornian will, you know. And I think it's funny because, you know, if you've got this Leo sun that's supposed to be pulling this chart along, this locomotive chart, but all the force seems to be coming from the opposite side of the chart. But that being said, maybe you're pushing this chart forward rather than pulling it until you get some steam up. So I think you've done an incredible job from that point of view. So kudos to you for that. I'm always impressed by people who make clear, definite spiritual choices in their life. Nancy did it last week when we were talking about it too, presented with all this data coming in at once and then managing to find a clear path and a clear way to organize all of this data and move forward. And I'm really seeing it in this chart too. So I think that's amazing. Yeah.
He needs to keep putting himself out there, and he needs to keep going down the road that he is going down, because I think he's headed in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. I would bet money though that if we were to come back in 20 years and look at this chart, you're going to be much closer to that heart energy though. That's where this road that you're on, this journey you're on, is leading you. You know, it's
yeah,
going to be
because
the cliffhanger at the end of season 1. You know, no, season 2. I think season 1 happened in 2018. Something happened there, and that's put you on this spiritual road. So that was season 1 wrapped up with a bow on top. I think maybe around season 3 or season 4, because you'll definitely get a repeat.
more of
Um,
your life.
yeah, I think we're going to be somewhere in the sun, the district of the sun. That's my guess.
Sun opposite Pluto coming up.
Where'd you say 2018?
Oh, well, you talked about 5 years ago. You made I just used 2018 to represent COVID. That's where it is in my mind. You said 5 years ago you made some decisions about relationships and about the trajectory your life was taking, the direction you wanted to invest your energy in. And I think for me, that sounds like a season finale. Something happened there. And you decided to make some choices and take control, which your chart's inviting you to do all the time.
Yeah, I would say I have many seasons for sure.
Sure. I think, yeah, but this isn't slice of life. I think there's a definite story happening here. Yeah, I think, and there's going to be some interesting episodes coming up. Yeah.
Stay tuned.
That's Well, does anybody have anything else they want to add? I think we've gone over time, but that's okay. We've done some amazing work this session. Does anything anybody else want to add? Any words of encouragement? Parting notes?
I think most of the big work is already done, Sidney, because Pluto has moved over all those other planets, and then after he gets to the moon, it's like smooth sailing. I don't know
Won't
why
that
I
be
said that,
interesting?
but it's like, you know, it's gone over. It's been through a lot, I tell you. So he knows where to go, and he's going wherever it is, and he's got all his personal planets on his side of the chart. So he's not giving away anything of his own to others. but he's still working with others on a deep level, or will be, should be.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree.
Because all the transpersonal planets are working with others, and he's
Yeah.
kept his personal life for his own, so he's not giving that away.
The interesting thing about that kind of energy, though, that observer energy, is you pick up on so much in other people too. You pick up on body language cues. You pick up on the voice, the way people use their voice. You pick up on words people use, because that describes the internal process of what's happening in their head. I can see Sidney nodding while I'm saying this too. So you pick up on all of these cues and all of this stuff without people even knowing it. So you're already building a set of tools when it comes to understanding and working with other people. And I think it sounds like you've spent a lot of time doing that ever since a young age, with all these big volatile moves that have happened in your life, and these experiences that you've had. And it sounds like now that you're using those tools and you're starting to make choices and move your life in the directions that you want to see things happening. So that Capricorn energy is definitely expressing, but it's using an Aquarian tool set to do it. And you've got all these nice enough Leo there on the chart to be able to work with people and to build trust and build all those tools that other people are looking for when you work with them. But I think you're seeing a lot more in the background of what's happening in your relationships with people than people are picking up on. And I guess the challenge for you is how to integrate all that Virgo energy, because that analytical noticing stuff about people and that Virgo way of delivering that doesn't always gel well with other people.
I'm learning. I'm learning to be a lot smoother and softer.
Yeah,
For sure.
especially when you seem so hard when they first met you, it's not what a heart person's going to say, is it? But you're figuring it out and you're putting yourself out there so you can have those experiences that are giving you the data that your Aquarius requires in order to keep moving this train forward from the rear. Yeah, so good on you for that. All right, guys.
Thank you so much. I think this
You're
was
welcome,
pretty good.
Sidney. It was an absolute pleasure. I hope you're going to come along for future readings. I really enjoy having that male energy in the group. That's great, but also your insights too, and your honesty. You're always honest and putting yourself out there, which is really, really cool. And thank you for finding
you
your
can see
voice,
from my
Sandra.
chat,
You
yeah.
had some real bombs to drop there too today, so it was really, really good to have that. Glad that you made your way into the group and that you've made your presence felt. It's definitely had a positive impact. So, yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. Wonderful group. I'm going to stop recording, but I won't shut the group down. So if anybody wants to talk or debrief, we're quite welcome to do that. Okay.